Welcome back to my world of modeling, guys. It's Dan here as always, and we're back here at the layout to look at some project cars that I've just finished up at the tail end of the year here, and it has been a wonderful year. 2024 has gone by so fast though. I'm certainly ready for 2025 and what kind of surprises 2025 may bring. I know I got a lot of projects planned and a lot of cool stuff coming in the pipeline that you guys are going to really love. I've been back on the workbench a lot, trying to get some stuff caught up. I've been slaving away actually trying to get some stuff done. Unfortunately, I've had some minor hiccups here and there with certain things. The biggest issue lately has been the site collapse of RRpicturearchives.net. Not having prototype photos as of lately has completely shut down a lot of my projects, so I was able to get a lot done there for a little while, and I got some projects filmed, and then everything just kind of fell apart after that because I couldn't get photos of any of the cars that I needed done. As of to date, I currently have about 12, maybe about 15 projects that are now on hold because photos are not available of those particular cars because the site RRpicturearchives.net had a massive data failure, and so the new ownership of the site has gone and they've been transferring photos over to a new server, and it's just a nightmare and it's a mess. But I didn't realize, how much of an issue not having that site would be to my modeling, because it's basically shut me down. Not just me, but a world of other modelers. So I've been kind of in limbo actually the last couple weeks, being like, I have all this stuff I need to finish up and I can't get anything done. So I've been really trying to redivert my work to starting new projects, and then only to find I don't have photos for those cars or locomotives and I can't go any further. So it's been a real hassle, but I have been able to finish up cars that I did have photos of, and in this video that's what we're going to be wrapping up this year with, is some of the cars I got done over the fall season and kind of the tail end of December here. So we're going to go ahead and set up on the layout here, and I'm going to go ahead and show you guys just a couple cars that I've gotten done. And don't worry, there's plenty more that's going to be coming in the next update, and a lot more how-to videos coming from the cars that I do have. We're just waiting on photos to actually get those projects finished. So let's go ahead and get set up and we'll start showing some cars. The first car I finished up is this really cool ACF prototype with the full car side graffiti. This one was copied from a photo of a similar car that I got to see that also happened to be an ACFX car. This is one of the newer Atlas Masterline Series 5701 plastic pellet type covered hoppers. They're really nice cars, although the molds are getting a little outdated at this point. They are nice though, because some of the details are pretty nice. They do have photo etch walkways, so they look okay with, in terms of plastic pellet cars. They fit okay, but I really wish someone would make a better version of this model. Anyways, this one is an ACFX car, and what I did with this one is a light fade. I hand painted all of the graffiti based on the photo I had of a similar ACFX car, like I said. Added KD couplers, weathered the trucks, wheels. The sides are very clean though. This car is a relatively fresh repaint. It's got the cool ACFX stencil style lettering. The biggest detailed feature of this car is of course the graffiti, and you'll notice the light streaking that I did down the side of the car. I've mentioned this in another video. On a car like this, what happens when you see patching or graffiti is you see this white chalky dust from the plastic residue and from the paint. It gradually starts to streak down, and when you have graffiti like a background on a car like this, it catches a lot of that, and you'll see a lot of that streaking as it runs down the graffiti. So I really like to try to make an effort of modeling that when I do cars like this with graffiti, because I don't like to have just fresh graffiti. I like to have an element of weathering where it pulls the graffiti more into the side of the car and blends it in. It makes it look a lot more prototypical. The other side just has some light tag work, as you'll see here. Otherwise, very, very simple. I just, again, copied some of this stuff from prototype photos of similar ACFX cars, but I just kept it very clean. I did add the KDs if I didn't mention that already. That's the lower shelf KD couplers. And then I also did some interior weathering, mainly on the interior floors there, a little bit of kick-up of course, and a light grime application around the hatches, just a very light application. Car number 2 is a really nice Mach X 4780. This is a custom patched Walther's Proto 4780. And with this car, what I did was I did all of the custom patching with, it slips my mind right now, trim film decals. That's what it is. What it is a black patch background first, and then I cut out squares for the lettering, applied the squares, then applied the lettering, which is Helvetica Graphics by Smokebox Decals. I just applied those for the specific number. I applied safety striping, new data, and I did a very extensive rust treatment to the sides. And how I did this rust was I first rusted up the sides and hand painted everything with acrylic work. I did some dry brushing, a lot of fine dot work, rust pitting and everything like that first. Then I followed behind with some airbrush work, blended up some things, grind up the underbody, did kick up lines, the usual 9 yards there. Of course, grind up the roofs. And then once I did that, I did a couple layers of oils going back and forth between a burnt umber oil and a raw sienna to create this reddish orange rust color. Very typical of an older prototype like this. So I just worked in various spots at a time, very slowly and very carefully. And with the amount of oil that I put on this car, it did take a long time to actually do. Matter of fact, this took about a month to actually get all the oil work done. And then it still took another couple weeks of other various works and things like that to actually complete the car entirely. But it was well worth the effort. There you can see some of the rust dots, things like that. Of course, I added some of the load spillage and things like that. On the top, there's a lot of fresh rust around certain areas, as you can see, as it's starting to come in contact with the air and the water from the rain. It starts to rust on contact like this. You get a lot of that fresh contact rust. A lot like how if you were to take a brand new nail and set it out in the rain, it rusts very quickly. It's the same kind of rust effect here. I custom painted the hatches, all the little lock bars and little hinges and everything like that. I custom painted, of course, and then blended those in with some rust, of course. On the opposite side here, the load spillage is a lot heavier, as you can see. Otherwise, the technique is the same. It's just multiple layers of acrylic work first, then oils, then doing some powder work, the patching, of course, and then doing all of the load spillage and progressive layers to get this particular effect. It's a lot of work, but cars like this need done, and I was really ready to get up to the challenge. This is one of those cars too where I had it in my collection for so long and I had to put it on my workbench and say, alright, I'm either going to do something with this thing or I'm going to sell it. And in this case I chose to do something with it, and now I have a banger looking Mach-X hopper. This next car here is an AEX rust bucket, and you guys know how much I love my AEX rust buckets. This is a former CNW car. It's a custom painted Intermountain car done by the Chicago and Northwestern Historical Society. This particular version of this car is somewhat rare, but I did want to get my hands on one of these for at least one really cool patch job. This car is 15888. I got custom decals made by Smokebox Graphics. I got those applied to the model, and I did all the various patching and everything like that, including the beat up logo patching. All that is done with acrylic work, and then the patching is done with the custom decals, as I said. The car does feature some custom graffiti. It features custom patching made out for the new safety striping, and then there you can see on the sides the old safety striping, which is slowly deteriorating away on the sides. Now, all the rust that you see, that's the fun part. Very similar to the Mach-X car here. I started with acrylic work first, built all that up, then I did some different oil layers to build up the rust streaking, and then I sealed all that up and followed behind with some powder work, and I mixed powders with a little bit of thinner and blended it out to create some very fine rust lines, replicating fresher rust coming down from a recent loadout where it's again come in contact with fresh air and water, and it starts to surface rust very, very quickly. As you can see, it just creates a real mess, and especially around the top of the car you can see that absolute mess of rust. Modeled some replacement walkway plates there, as you can see. Custom painted the hatches and all the little details like the lock bars and hinges again, of course. So there's a lot going up there on the roof. Lots of grime, pitting, and all kinds of other really good effects on the base. All those little areas are important to get a realistic effect for a salt car like this, so I really take my time in modeling all these different effects. This side here is just absolutely caked in salt runoff, as you can see. It's all done with acrylic work, and it's just blended over right on top of all the other existing work that I've done. So it's a lot of different layers, a lot of dull coat in between, and a lot of dry and cure time to make all this work. But it's worth it in the end because you get a really good end result with something like this. This next prototype is another CNW AEX 4750, and this one is based off prototype photos of the real AEX 22659. This one features prototypical patching, prototypical weathering, accurate safety stripe placement, prototypical graffiti, prototypical patching, all the way down to the mismatched hatches on the top. Again, this was all done with some oil and acrylic washes, different powder effects, All the patching is done with either Smokebox graphics decals. I did use some of the Fusion Scale models AEX modern patch decals because the AEX patch font is different on the later versions of these cars. All the safety striping, of course, added. All the beat up patch effects done for the CNW logo there. This car features a lot of that surface rust there, as you can see. Lots of fresh rust. Again, replaced walkways. You can see some of the details of the roof walk there. It's just nicely grimed up. All the metal parts are rusted over, of course. Heavy kick-up on the underbody, heavy kick-up on the ends. There's a good look at that kick-up line. Lots of mud splatter, of course, and then a good look at that custom patching. If we turn the car around here, you guys can see the opposite side and a little bit more of that graffiti. And again, I would say that you guys can go and look this car up on Railroad Picture Archives real quick, but you can't because the site's still down, unfortunately, as of the making of this video. Or at least it's still back up, but there's no photos of real cars yet, as far as I know. Anyways, this side has a lot more of that reddish, rusty rust, the fresher rust, like I said, and it's starting to streak down the side of the car there, and it's starting to kind of consume and peel away at the paint. There's a really good look at that beat up CNW logo there too. You can see the CNW Herald is just starting to bleed through that patching just a little bit. Honestly, this is one of my personal favorite CNW cars right now. This was another car that took many hours to actually complete, and I'm very satisfied with it. My third CNW covered hopper is another AEX Prototype, because of course it is. This one was a real fun one. This is AEX 14666, and this car, again, like all the others, features multiple layers of rust work, lots of grime work. This is one of the experimental cars, as I like to call it. This is one of the first cars where I really went in full detail, using a lot of thinner and powder layers to create a lot of this fresher runny rust. Especially there on the placard, you can see there's a lot of paint chipping and peeling on that placard, but it's starting to get a lot of that rust runoff from the top there over the placard a little bit. And I was just really working on it, and I was not getting the results I wanted, and finally after some point I was able to make the right mixture of thinner and powder. And when I blended it all out on the side of the car and it actually dried and cured, it created a really nice light rust effect like I got here. But it did take a lot of attempts to actually get it right, unfortunately. And that's just one of the symptoms of having to try to learn things as you go. But now that I know how to do this technique properly, I was able to tackle a lot of other really unique prototypes. And you're going to see more cars like this with this kind of weathering now that I've unlocked that ability to be able to do weathering like this. The other things I did, obviously, again, custom hand-drawn graffiti, lots of grime, kick-up, everything like that. Lots of rust. This one has custom hatches. These are scratch-built hatches in this case, the fiberglass style hatch. All the patching is custom decals. Lots of rust on the top there, replacement walkway platforms, because AEX replaces a lot of those walkway platforms. I don't know if they just get really deteriorated or really dangerous or if they get damaged, but a lot of these CNW cars, you see those replaced walkways and replacement hatches, so it's kind of interesting. This opposite side here shows a lot more of that streaking, that rust streaking we talked about with the powders. That really came out well on this side, and then this side also has a really good look at that old beat up CNW placard from a bygone era of railroading where railroads used to display logos and heralds and reporting marks and things like that on billboard style platforms like that. Cars like this are exceptionally rare these days, and when you do see them, it's a real treat. This is a car I did actually get to see in real life. I don't know if the real thing still exists now, but I was able to use photos of this car. I guess I should mention too, while I'm on it, it wasn't this exact number, but it was a 14666 something number. Alright guys, this next car is another really interesting and unique prototype. This one is WGR 16225. This is a recent release by Intermountain, and Intermountain's version of, I guess, what they would call like a prime for grime scheme. And what they did here was they actually modeled a lot of this really interesting paint deterioration and base primer showing through the paint. This car was so cool, even though I didn't really need it. I really wanted one just because the weathering was so awesome. The only things I did to this was obviously hand paint all the graffiti. I did some slight patching changes, custom painted the hatches, did a lot of rust effects, things of that sort, added the safety striping. On the sides, there's a lot of rust runoff coming down from the walkway supports. Cylindrical like this, very common. You see a lot of that rust coming down from those little supports. Areas like that gets a lot of rust. A lot of kick up on the ends, lots of grime on the brake rigging and all the brake gear. Same thing on the end platform, both sides there. The underbody is completely caked in grime. Lots of mud, lots of dust. The trucks are grimed up real well and they have lots of mud. There's a better look at that graffiti. Again, that was just copied from photos of a similar WGR cylindrical. And I just pieced it all together and then I blended it in, faded it down, and weathered it in with the sides of the car. So again, this is a really good example of a model where it has the graffiti, but the graffiti is weathered into the car, so it looks much more prototypical and much more realistic. And we'll go ahead and turn the car around here. This side highlights some more of the really cool paint chipping that I did and some of the rust pitting that's at the base of this car. A lot of this takes place when they use hammers and sledgehammers and things like that to slam the sides to loosen the commodity inside, in this case grain. They just leave a lot of little pock marks, a lot of little hammer marks, and over time it starts to rust, it starts to accumulate. So all this was hand painted with acrylics. I then followed behind with little dots of oil, blended that all out. Similar to how I rendered some of the oil work on the top, just blending some of that rust out very slowly and very carefully. It created a wonderful effect like you see here on the sides. On the top of the car, there's a good look at some of the effects I did. You can see I modeled some of the paint chipping, some of the bare aluminum on those walkways as the paint peels off and is grimed over. Really cool effect there. Something I don't do often, but every once in a while I choose a prototype to play around with, and in this case it worked really well for this WGR cylindrical. Alright guys, this last covered hopper here is going to be yet another AEX prototype, and this one was weathered similar to how the Mach-X car was done, the very first Mach-X we showed. This was done using progressive layers of acrylic work first to build up the rust. Then a couple layers of oils, a little bit of blending using an airbrush, lots of grime, lots of dirt, mud splatter, all kinds of different dot techniques, all kinds of different effects to do this. And being that this is a tangent hopper, I really try to trick this out and make it look nice. I used the custom AEX decals. Those are by Fusion Scale decals, the new car data, everything like that, all those stencils. The redone areas anyway, those are all data decals by Smokebox Graphics. You can see on the sides there's a lot of that red running rust. There's a lot of fine rust dots and little pitting sections and things like that, but the rust is just really unique on this car. Honestly, I wish I could get the camera closer to this, but it'd get all blurry. But there's just a lot of fine rust dot work, and this thing took many hours to do. I was just sitting there working in small layers at a time, just blending things out, adding more paint, letting the paint dry, adding more paint over time, and it really did become a time-consuming process. This car was one I had worked on off and on all throughout the fall this last year, and it just really took some time. But overall it came out really well, and I'm really satisfied with the results. This one is a salt car, similar to the first one, custom hatches, just custom painted those, and then did all the lock bar detail and everything like that. There's all that rust, and then you can see all the salt spillage just starting to streak down the sides, very lightly on the side here. And then on this side there's a little bit less of that salt streaking. I really wanted to have more of a blank canvas to just show some of the rust. So you have one side that has the really cool load spillage, and then this side has the really cool rust effects. And it's hard to describe this kind of rust, but it's the kind of rust that just consumes the side of a car like this very quickly. And it's such a unique and a really cool effect that I wanted to do at least a couple versions of this. But again, it's hard to do and it takes time. So getting cars like this done and getting them completed is definitely rare for me these days. But every once in a while I crank one of these kinds of cars out and it just looks really good. Again, there's a good look at those rust dots. A lot of that pitting that kind of accompanies those heavier chunks of rust. Once that's all blended out with some of the oil rendering, it just looks so amazing. Alright, so that got a little extensive there very quickly, but that's what happens when I get an accumulation of projects like that. They just kind of build up. I got a lot more hoppers coming too to show you guys. That was a lot of hoppers. Hopefully by next video I have some different rolling stock coming as well. I have a number of other how-to videos I just started finishing up here too, so hopefully you guys can stay tuned for those. And like I said, I got more coming, so stay tuned for that. As Railroad Picture Archives comes back and they start uploading more railcar photos, hopefully I can get the ball rolling on some more projects as well, because I really do need to get some more stuff done and hopefully get some more content for you guys up here in the next year as well. So I really want to thank you guys. It's been a wonderful 2024, and you guys again have just been such a great community. I've gotten so much great feedback, lots of new subscribers, and lots of great comments and lots of great support. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much, guys. And lastly, I want to say Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year's to you and your families. I hope you guys are safe, and I look forward to seeing you guys in 2025. Take care, guys. Be safe.